Hey, so Skylanders, right? You remember it, don't you? Now what are some of the most iconic characters in the series? What? Trigger Happy? Gill Grunt? I mean, I guess so, but who else? Specifically from the Undead element? That's right, Chop Chop. Now, Chop Chop is such a beloved Skylander by the fanbase, and I had always thought of him as one of the stronger Skylanders in the game, and probably the best Undead Skylander. That was until some people had started to dunk on him, and it was then that I realized that he was weaker than Hex. I tried denying it. I played through some levels with Chop Chop and Hex, Series 1 and 2 each, and Hex came out on top. This devastated me, but I still had some hope left. Ghost Roaster. He was the only Undead Skylander from the first game that I didn't have yet, and I would be picking him up soon. Part of me prayed that he would be trash, just so I wouldn't have to recognize Chop Chop as the weakest Undead Skylander. But sadly, he's kind of peaked. So, begrudgingly, let's go over him. Remember when I made this section as a throwaway gag and called it boring? Yeah, me too. Anyways, I'm making an exception here simply for the fact that his backstory is wild. This guy lived his life as a chef, and that sort of tracks given his gameplay and name. But then, he falls down a ravine, ends up in the underworld, dead, and he starts eating other ghosts. Then, the mayor of that section of the underworld arrests him, sentences him to jail, and gives him a ball and chain. Not only does that explain why this man has some oro at that spike chain, but he's also a criminal and a cannibal. So yeah, why is he a Skylander again? What was he on smoking? So first off, his primary attack has him put that sick-ass chain to use by having him tail whip it forward, dealing some pretty good damage at a decently fast rate. This attack is great for chip damage, and is primarily useful for chipping away at single enemies, but it isn't horrible for dealing with smaller groups. I gotta say, this move is really weird. Despite being a simple primary attack, it doesn't offer any combos. That makes him and Bash the only two true melee SSA characters without combos. His secondary attack is where it gets really interesting. It's his most iconic ability, the Skull Charge. He transforms into a large, spectral version of his own head and begins to dash around, biting anything that gets in his way. How does he become a giant head? I don't know, maybe go ask Chaos. This move does some pretty okay damage, but not that much more than an upgraded chain attack. Initially, it doesn't last very long, which makes it somewhat spammable. Well, until you upgrade it so that the charge lasts longer, which totally ruins the attack. Why does this matter? Because the Skull Charge only deals damage once. This wouldn't be a problem if you could cancel the attack and then start it up again like Wrecking Ball or Drill Sergeant, but no, you can't. You hit the enemies once each, and then you run around waiting for it to end, starting it back up again, or using your primary attack and not being very mobile. And as you might gather, it leads to Ghost Roaster having a surprisingly high skill ceiling, what with having to know exactly when his charge attack will end and having to manage resources and time button presses perfectly with his tertiary attack, which I'll get into now. His tertiary attack, Ectoplasm Mode, allows him to enter a spectral state, making him completely invisible, slowing him down and causing him to take around 13 damage every few seconds while in the form. This is amazing. It's incredibly unique, making Ghost Roaster the only one of the original 32 to be able to deal self-inflicted damage. But it also allows him to get out of sticky situations by phasing through everything that comes his way, though your health is a limited resource, so you can only rely on the move so much. Lastly, even though it isn't an attack, good old Ghosty here has a passive ability. Whenever he kills an enemy with his chain whip, he can fetch me their souls and turn the defeated enemy into a ghost that will deal low damage to nearby enemies, similar to Cinder's ghosts. These little guys are great for extra chip damage, and they'll become even more useful once we get on to the... Ghost Roaster McBoaster over here has two paths served to him. Fear Eater, which improves his Ectoplasm Mode, and Skullmaster, which, you guessed it, improves his Skull Charge. Let's start off with Fear Eater. Fear Eater's first upgrade causes him to create a small explosion around him whenever he enters his ectoplasm mode. Now, if video games have taught me anything, it's that attacks that deal damage to the user have to be extremely powerful to be worth the trade-off. Now, I'm expecting this move to deal a lot of damage. Oh my god, this hits like a wet paper towel. I mean, I'll be nice here. The ectoplasm mode is purely a defensive tool. The damage this upgrade deals is just a nice bonus to that, but it's not really something to rely on too much. The second upgrade on this path improves the ectoplasm mode directly. You now take less damage while moving around in the form and move faster. This is a pretty good upgrade, allowing you to rely on the ectoplasm form a bit more and not having to worry about the mode putting you in kill range nearly as much. Okay, the third upgrade. The third upgrade makes it so that touching a ghost while in ectoplasm mode causes a powerful explosion. Alright, maybe they got the memo this time. If this explosion is as powerful as they say it is, maybe this will bump up the path significantly. Undead. Wait, what's that sound? Anyways, 13 damage? What? Excuse me? I used up my sweet HP, not to mention a ghost that deals 12 damage a hit for 13 damage once? What the fuck? Okay, let's move on to the Skullmaster path. The first upgrade increases the damage of the Skull Charge by a lot. Though it slightly increases the length of his Skull Charge, which is something that does sort of peeve me. Though the extra damage from this upgrade definitely makes up for the duration of the dash. This upgrade definitely makes the charge an even more viable option for dealing with groups of enemies, though the chain whip is still probably better for single target damage given the nature of the dash. The attack also now stops you for a split second before running into an enemy, which is weird, and it counts as a different attack than his Skull Charge, because it's impossible to unlock his signature quest with this upgrade unlocked. Weird. We're already looking great on this path, as we move on to the second upgrade, which makes it so that ghosts can now be spawned by killing enemies with the Skull Charge, too. Given that we just saw his Skull Charge become much more powerful, these upgrades go hand in hand together. Strangely, it also creates ghosts whenever you destroy barrels or other destructible objects. What? Is this Undertale or something? Why do the inanimate objects have souls? Regardless, the more souls you fetch, the more DPS you can deal, so in my books, this upgrade is great. For Ghost Roaster's final upgrade on the Skullmaster path, it lets him... He did the thing! He ate a ghost! He truly is the Ghost Roaster. Where do I even start? Eating ghosts is already something that makes sense for him. The healing is really good, and this goes amazing with the last upgrade I talked about. You kill an enemy with the Skull Charge, spawn a ghost, and if you need to heal, you can circle back around and devour it. Do I even need to compare the paths? We have a clear winner served to us on a silver platter. The Skullmaster path. Not only is the healing amazing, the increased damage and extra ghosts really just build off of what was already in his kit. His Soul Gem allows the ghosts that Ghost Roaster creates to hit multiple enemies at once, while having increased range and knockback. Not much to talk about, it just makes the ghosts even better and lets our undead friend here do what he does even better. I think Ghost Roaster's different moves and abilities mesh together perfectly. Except for the Skull Charge overstaying its welcome, but better players can always play around that. Overall, you just want to speed around with your Skull Charge to take on groups of enemies, switch to your Chain Whip for single target, or for situations where you probably shouldn't use your dash, and be prepared to shave off a little health to avoid dying, and finally, stack up ghosts and watch as your DPS skyrockets. He's just so much fun to play as. He's so peak. Chop chop, ooh, Ghost Roaster's my goat now.